I now want to touch on valuations
Yes.
a bit more, okay? If you're producing something which is above the market rent, you want to prove the market rent. If you can turn around to a valuer and show them a piece of paper when building control signed off, then give them 6, 7 ASTs, all signed up in the same month, that is the market rent. How can you argue?
I always like to be, belts and braces evaluation. Why not get
Definitely.
the full
You've got
amount?
You've got one shot. I now want to touch on valuations
Yes.
a bit more, okay? And clients, I always ask clients, are you going for the market rent, or are you creating something which is above the market rent? Yeah. Generally, they always say, I'm creating something above the market rent. Yeah, because they're trying to maximize the valuations. Yeah. And we're doing an HMO talk next week. And,
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I always ask that question because it really dictates when I get the valuer in. Because if you're producing something which is above the market rent, you want to prove the market rent. So that's why I always like to fill an HMO. Yeah.
Yes.
If we're going above the market rent and literally give the valuer 6, 7, 8 ASTs, say, look, I got building control on this date. I filled it in a timely fashion. Yeah. 4 to 6 weeks. And the key is to start marketing before.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. And if you're doing, again, this is the advantage if you're doing a few and you've got a bit of volume going, you can be advertising, you're filling something, and you're going, well, this one's full.
Yep.
But if you're keen, I've got another one that's going to be ready.
Yeah.
Quite quick down the road. And why don't you come and have it? Well, you can have a look at an existing one to say this is what we're going to do in the next one.
Yeah. Do you want to go on the short list?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it works brilliantly. If you can turn around to a valuer and show them a piece of paper when building control signed off, then give them 6, 7 ASTs, all signed up in the same month, that is the market rent. How can you argue? The trouble is, if people push the rent too much and then they don't fill it, it's like an elastic band. Sometimes it snaps back.
Okay, so if you haven't filled it, so the secret really is get them all filled pretty quickly, illustrate that it's been quick, rather than taking a while, I've taken 3 months you've got a good rent, but it's taken 3 months to get there.
Yeah.
So therefore, is it really the market rent? Because it's taken a while. So it's like demonstrating, because some people ask me, should I fill it? Should I not fill it? When can I refinance? Because as I've been saying, we're trying to push that kind of recycling as quickly as possible, shorten the cycle as much as possible, and therefore they want to be putting in before it's filled or whatever. And like if it's a good market, then you're going to get it filled pretty quick, and therefore people can see you pretty much filled it. But I always like to be belts and braces evaluation. Why not get
definitely
the full amount?
You've got one shot. You've got one shot.
This is the thing that I think, this is the thing that people don't always realise is you've got one shot. It's also expensive to try and have lots of shots.
Yeah.
But as we were discussing today on a case, there was someone who had put in, well, I've done a valuation over here on this on this valuing panel. I've done a VAS over here on this value. And it's like, well, you're then limiting. You go, well, I'll go to a different lender. But you've kind of like, it's going to be on the record for this panel valuing of what the value was. So someone else is not necessarily going to come out and value it differently, even though they would have given you a slightly better valuation if you'd understood what was going on in the first place, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
So you don't want to shoot your valuation, options in the foot by like being trigger happy.
Very politely
put. You need to do this. So this is why valuations, although, it's a bit of a boring topic to me, but it is so crucial to HMOs.
Exactly. And what clients need to do is put together valuation packs. Start guiding the valuer on your thought process 3 days before the valuation's going in. So in a valuation pack, I just want to see what I normally ask for on a Word document, the address of the property. Yeah, let's just start it off with the address.
Let's start with the obvious thing.
Start with the
People
address.
forget.
Yeah, this is the address. Okay, then little picture of the property. Yeah.
Yep.
And then ask for a little overview, what you've done, when you bought it, what your market you're looking for. Just give a little bit of a flavour.
Before and afters, what it was.
Yeah, before and after floor plans, before and after pictures, schedule of works, always great. Love mood boards. If it's for development finance, where you're trying to create.
So when you're so the mood boards there, obviously, if they can't see what it's going to be, that's where you have past examples, mood boards,
and that's for the development side of it. For the exit, they can see what you're creating. You don't need a mood board. But
that is critical, isn't it? Is obviously sometimes the build finance section, the bit that they were to get the builders funding and enough headroom, you need that end valuation. You can't just go, oh, well, I know I'll get it in the end.
Yeah.
Because if you're too far out early doors, when you're trying to say you're not going to get all the build. And as we know, if you don't get all the build, then suddenly you need a lot more. They kind of take it off what they lend you at the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I'll have to find that extra 20, 30, 50 grand at the end when something else might have come in. It's like, no, it needs to be there at the beginning, tied up, and you're losing it for all of that time.
Spot on.
And, and I think people don't always understand it almost, because I always vision it as like, oh, well, if I get slightly less of a loan because I'm hitting the GDVs, the 70% GDV at the back end, I'm thinking, I could just top it up at the end, can't I? And I'll find that money there or find that money there. But it's not. It's at the beginning, and it's so frustrating.
Correct. So they touch on development finance. They just touch on it. Because I talk about buckets.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got bucket A, which is the money to buy the property. Bucket B, to actually the build cost. And bucket C, for the interest. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Bucket A, B, and C can't be more than 70% loan to GDV. Okay.
Right,
and if you've got planning involved, you're going to be hitting the loan to GDV, not the loan to costs. Okay.
Yeah.
So and what they look at is that we estimate how much money is going to be in bucket B. We'll take that. We know what the build costs are. We'll take that, and whatever's left out of that 70% loan to GDV is what you get in bucket A. Yeah.
Oh, so they fill. Yeah, so they're filling backwards.
Yes.
So they've got the water, they filled up bucket C, they fill up bucket B, and they go, oh, we haven't got as much as we thought we might for bucket A.
Spot on. Yeah, and that's how I like to explain it, okay? Because they like to back-end fund stuff.
So there we are thinking we're going to get 75% loan to value of purchase price.
Yeah.
But actually,
There's
not enough water to fill up to the 75%.
Yeah.
And you're then down at 50%, and you're like, Where's
my money?
Where's my money suddenly gone?
Yeah.
And that's because the funding isn't structured correctly. Now, I think it's great because obviously having this build finance section now these days, obviously you need less money to put into an HMO as you used to, and you can still do it quite effectively. Obviously, there's higher interest, so you need that headroom in the GDV, because otherwise bucket C has stolen a lot of money out of you, because when you're funding the build as well as the purchase, buckets A and B, it's going to be expensive. So you need to understand that and be able to recycle
and also use the right valuer.
And use the right valuer.
Right. Do you remember that chap who was in our creative funding course?
Yes.
He used Roma.
Yes.
Love Roma. Roma are brilliant on blocks of flats.
Yeah.
Okay? They use bricks and mortar valuations. So you don't use them for over-adapted HMOs. You don't use them for Article 4. You don't use them for sui generis. Okay? So you have to get the right development firm which uses the right valuation methodology.
Yeah.
And then you, preferably VAS, because then you want to take that valuer's valuation.
Is it because they're not VAS? Is it because they don't value the methodology?
I don't know. They're not VAS. They're not VAS. They're.
So, and the VAS is the key, in terms of HMOs, VAS is the gold star kind of valuation type
it's because,
methodology.
because they've got good commercial valuations, and also they've got lots of exit lenders on their panel. What you find is most development finance, most bridges use Method, and most term lenders use VAS, and that's where you got the disjunction.
Okay.
So what you want to do?
So even though a VAS valuer might come in and say, yes, this is a great GDV, a Method valuer who's going with Roma doesn't give you a great GDV, therefore might not give you the lending on the
Correct.
build section, or actually, as we've just discovered, bucket A.
Yeah.
Your money runs out before you start filling bucket A.
Yeah.
And then your bucket A needs a lot of cash to go into it. And therefore, really, you haven't helped as much as you thought. And then you've ended up with this expensive development product. So I'm a great believer. Look, there's a lot of people out there who are very active investors, don't have loads of money, want to borrow money to do HMOs. But there's also a lot of people out there who do have money and are wanting to do HMOs, because I feel, one of the things that we both say is buy-to-let dead's in the south of England now, because the yields are so small, and the amount of deposit you need to put in and the returns that you get and the renters' rights has scared people off and all of this kind of stuff. So really, if you want to continue to invest in the old fashion, you kind of need to use HMOs, in my view. The BRR of buy-to-lets is now you need to be doing the BRR, or I call it BP, by planning RRR of the HMO world. And then you can still invest really well. You get really good cash flows if you do it correctly as well. And actually, they're not as bad to manage as some people are like, oh my God, this is all complex. There is complexity to it, but that makes it harder for people. But that is the new world. So if you've got cash and wondering what to do with it, you can still do it. And you can just fund the purchase of the property. And if you've got all that money, you can fund the build yourself. You'll recycle so much more. And that's the model that I'm saying, that if you've got some cash, you can then, you put your money in and then you keep going and keep going. So you recycle more than maybe a person who doesn't have so much money and is also borrowing the deposits and all that. They're really stretched for cash. And always. So if you've got some money, the model is actually insane. And that's what I mean, is to have a pot of money, push it round all these times over 5 years and have the same amount of money, a whole portfolio given maybe, depending on how much you've got. Like, if you've got 500K, you could be 500K every year. And you're like thinking, well, I'm pretty sure after 5 years, I've got options to leave my nice 6-figure job,
And look at if you just look at the cost of bridging short-term funding and the cost of the monitoring surveyors coming around, strip all that out.
Yeah.
We've looked at exchange with delay completion cases.
Where
we don't use the bridging. And 9 out of 10 times they're going to
recycle all of it. Yeah, because one of my mentees has got a case at the moment where he's looking at an HMO and doing an exchange delayed completion. It'll be a bigger HMO by the time they're finished. That then is like you're going to have a higher GDV, a higher end value than when you're buying it for, which means, okay, you've had to fund the build and development of it. Yeah. But if you've gone through the planning and haven't had to be on the bridge in the time, you're going to recycle your cash. These aren't like normal deals, but they're out there. Yeah. They are out there. But that's where I just think, I say to people quite often, it's the cost of the bridge that you leave in. Yeah. And it's so the more you borrow, the more you'll leave in. Yep. And if you've got more cash and can use the more cash, then obviously it's not so expensive, the borrowing costs. Yeah. And yes, you still need a bridge because you can't use a buy-to-let finance to do that kind of stuff. What people try and get away with. Oh, but I'm doing this development on buy-to-let finance. I'm having a bit of problems with it. Okay. Yes. Okay. So, get the right finance. I always say get the right finance. So doing it correctly. So get the right finance. But if you're just doing 75% of purchase price and the rest is funded, reduces the cost way down.
It's great.
And then you can recycle more. Then you've got more. Then this
is
where you can do
it. 50%. Yeah. To help. Borrow as little money. This is mad coming from me, okay? But borrow as little money as possible. And I actively encourage my clients to do that. Why? Because they're going to be more successful. And then they're going to do another deal with me.
Well, they're going to recycle more money. Yeah. So the more money you've got that is your own, if you've got a good business, a good income or a good saving or an inheritance or, I've seen all of these kind of scenarios. and then they go, right, I'm starting using it, or even pulled out some equity at a low interest rate out of your own house, or borrowed some equity from there, or just, cheap finance that you can then put in. And imagine if you've got a lot of equity and you've got some income so you can afford that, taking money out of your house, and you manage to take out, I don't know, 400k, and imagine in 5 years' time you have 400k of income and put that back in, and you're back in a position. What a much better position, because you've just been wise with equity that you've got. So
Correct.
It's about being clever. The difference between those that just don't do much and those that are active and thinking about their wealth creation. It's about being clever with what you've got and utilising that, and not necessarily stretching yourself too much, all these types of things that people over time have done. I think, you're leaving a lot in, and then you're chasing and chasing and chasing. So very much keen on the HMO model for people with a bit of cash. They might not know what to do, but that's where you go and get some expert help, or a lot of people. Yeah. But a lot of people, I find then they're the ones who are like, well, I'll buy ready-made because I'm not quite sure what to do.
Yeah, but you just leave so much money in.
But you just then
it's just dead money.
But then you put your deposit in and you're waiting.
Yeah.
And guess what? You'll wait a long time probably before you can get your money out.
Yeah.
So I'm very keen on this whole get your money in, develop, get your money out on an HMO.
Yeah.
And that is the best way for your ROI or your ROCE, return on capital employed, when you leave in, and that needs to be a really, really good return.